Over the years, we've done a handful of videos on the homeless situation here in the United States. Being in Portland, Oregon, I'm in one of the worst places for the homeless situation. And so we started doing videos way back in 2019. That's 5 years ago? It's a long time in YouTube years. But back in 2019, we did our first video, and it was on the best places to be homeless in the United States, meaning where can you get the most help? Which cities have the most resources if you do end up on the streets? And that's what this first video is all about. Let's take a look.
What is going on, everyone? It is time to talk about something a little bit different. On this channel, we focus a lot on where you might want to move to and where you might not want to move to. And when I say move, I mean buy a home, rent a place, stay to Airbnb, whatever. The sad fact is, not everyone has those options, and even some people don't want those options. I'm of course talking about homeless people. For whatever reason, people end up living on the street. Now, the old myth was that it's just lazy people and addicts. Those are the only people that end up living under bridges or something. But the reality is a different story. Now, I'm not saying those aren't a couple big reasons, but there are 1,000,001 reasons why someone ends up on the streets. Loss of a job, unexpected illness, loss of their spouse and their income, mental illness, the list goes on. During the financial crisis of 2008, the US saw a major jump in the number of people living on the streets. Most estimates have the number of homeless in America around 560,000 people. That is about how many people live in Wyoming. We have an entire state worth of people that are homeless in this country. Now, I did see other estimates being around 2 to 3 million, but that's usually from some homeless support groups and stuff like that. But the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness has the number around 560-ish thousand. We'll assume they have the closest count. With so many homeless, I thought we would take a look at best places to be if this is the hand that life has dealt you. So sit back, be thankful you live indoors, and watch my top 10 best cities to be homeless. Number 10, New York City, New York. New York is one of the best cities you could be homeless in. Currently, there's 91,000 residents experience homelessness within the city, so you'll have a lot of company being homeless. In recent years, homelessness in New York City has reached the highest levels it's had since the Great Depression of the 1930s. You know it's never a good thing when someone follows up a stat with a Great Depression reference. Since the weather in New York City can get well below freezing in the winter, the city has the least amount of unsheltered homeless residents in the country, with only 5% during the winter, obviously. They have over 200 shelters. The reason it makes the best list, with it getting so cold and all that, you'd think it wouldn't, it's the New York City Department of Homeless Services. This is one of the best and the biggest homeless service departments in the country. These people work hard and they deserve a lot of praise. I'm sure they don't get enough of. Bravo, you guys, you're doing great. Number 9, Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City is a city that is very big on helping the homeless. Actually, they help anyone when in need. The city has 14 different shelters, including housing assistants and volunteers that supply food to shelters throughout the city. Salt Lake City is the center of the Mormon universe. So yeah, the homeless get some help. As a matter of fact, the church has donated more than $50 million over the past decade to 9 groups that serve the homeless in the Salt Lake Valley. No word on if they make you join the church once you get help. Sure, they'd like you to, but I don't think it's required. Number 8, Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth is a great place to be homeless. Most cities have a hard time getting homeless residents back on their feet after they've ended up on the streets. Not Fort Worth. They're doing something right. In 2014, they had an all-time high homeless population of 2,400 residents. I know compared to other cities that's not that many, but we're talking per capita here. Now in 2019, the population is down to about 1,600 or 1,700. The city offers shelters as well as employment opportunities, which have shown to be aiding in the success. I wonder how many of the homeless in the Dallas-Fort Worth area became homeless after betting everything on the Cowboys winning a Super Bowl in the 2000s. Number 7, Las Vegas, Nevada. Wow, people hitting rock bottom and living on the street in Vegas? Nobody saw that one coming, did they? Las Vegas has a violent crime rate that is 62% higher than the national average. In many cities across the country, homeless residents fear for their safety every single day while they're on the streets. While the city does offer shelters, the city also offers homeless courtyards. Homeless courtyards is a courtyard where individuals can stay overnight or during the day, and it offers showers, porta potties, and security 24 hours a day. So it's It's just basically a fenced off area for the homeless. But what makes homeless courtyards different from shelters is they don't require breathalyzers before you're accepted into the shelter or into the courtyard. Could you imagine being the poor dude at a shelter that has to run the breathalyzer machine? You test like 200 people a day and you hear, I swear, I just used mouthwash 99 times. Number 6, Phoenix, Arizona. As of last year, in 2018, the homeless population jumped nearly 11% to 9,800 homeless residents in Phoenix. Since the city has such a homeless crisis, the city has stepped up its efforts to help. Phoenix offers a wide variety of options for individuals like resource centers, shelters, youth shelters, motel vouchers, food vouchers, and food banks. So, all the things you need to get back up on your feet. Phoenix is a good place to be an urban camper. It gets hot, but never too cold. If you see a homeless person in Phoenix, they always say don't give them money, but they don't say not to give them Gatorade and sunscreen. Maybe even some lotion and or skincare system. I don't know. Nothing like going to your first job interview in like 5 years. You walk in, your face is bright pink from the sun, and the interviewer goes, "Holy shit, do you need some moisturizer or aloe?" Number 5, Los Angeles, California. California has nearly 130,000 homeless residents. There's about 80,000 homeless residents in Los Angeles alone. Why not? If you're gonna be homeless, why not here? It has great weather, and since you're homeless, chances are you don't have to deal with the traffic or like getting car insurance quotes or anything like that. Los Angeles has the largest percentage of unsheltered individuals at a rate of about 75%. So they have more than enough urban campers. Although if these residents do decide to seek a shelter, the city offers a wide range of services like standard shelters, 7 animal shelters, food banks, and employment agencies. You name it, they got it. Just stay away from Skid Row. That place looks like a movie set for some apocalyptic movie or something. Number 4, San Francisco. If it isn't already obvious, the homeless people really shouldn't be living on the streets in the upper parts of this country. Homelessness isn't a great experience already, so why add snow into the experience? Doesn't make sense. San Francisco is in Northern California, but it's not too far north to where people are freezing on the streets. Homeless are everywhere in San Francisco. And stop typing. We don't want to read your comment about people crapping in the street. There was some article about it, and that just gets brought up anytime the Bay Area is mentioned. We've heard it before. Move on with your life. There are a lot of reasons they have so many urban campers. One of the reasons that sprung up in, let's say, the last decade or so is the rise of the tech industry. Tech companies, which are all over the Bay Area, have brought in high-paying jobs and priced about 60% of the population from prior to 2000 out of the city. This has also led to some workers actually living out of their car while maintaining a good job, like $60,000 a year. They can't afford to live in an apartment in San Francisco in some cases, with student loans and all that stuff. It's a nightmare. So they are considered homeless, even though they don't fall into the classic description of homeless. San Francisco has tons of shelters, places to get something to eat if you're homeless, a lot of support programs, and great weather, considering. Number 3, Seattle, Washington. Washington is one of the top 5 states with the most homeless in the country. Got about 22,000 homeless residents. Seattle alone has 12,000 of them. Being the city with the most homeless in the state, Seattle offers many resources for these individuals. Some just for men, some just for women, some for women and children, some for homeless youths, animal shelters, traditional housing, and more. The weather isn't great here, but they have a ton of resources, and the city doesn't really crack down on them that hard as most places do. So that's kind of nice for them. This is another place that has workers with serious student loan debt living out of their cars while having a decent job. And that sucks. The whole thought of a mortgage is so far away, they don't even dream about home ownership. I talked to a copyright lawyer in Seattle last year, actually probably about 6 months ago, and he said he lived in his car and worked at a law firm for 18 months out of law school. He's a lawyer, had so much debt he couldn't even do it. Anyway, that sucked. But Seattle's pretty good for homeless people. Number 2, Honolulu, Hawaii. Hawaii is a very popular place for everyone, including the homeless. Just last year, it was reported that there was an average of about 4,400 homeless residents in the city of Honolulu. The city offers many things for homeless individuals. Not only is the weather like perfect almost, but the city has 4 homeless shelters, a humane society, and a blood bank where people can actually donate some plasma for some extra cash. I don't know if it's donating if you're getting paid for it. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, Hawaii is an island paradise, so it isn't a bad place. Actually, it's a pretty good place to be homeless if you got to be homeless. And before we get to number 1, don't forget there's a poll at the end of the video with questions that will help out in future videos. And number 1, San Diego, California. San Diego has a homeless population of around 8,500 urban campers. I can't believe there isn't more. There should be a ton more people living here. San Diego is the best place to be homeless since the weather's so nice year-round and it rarely rains. The city offers many different kinds of services to help those less fortunate residents. Some services include food banks, shelters, male and female homes, as well as transition housing assistance. You could be homeless anywhere else in the world and it would never be nearly as good as San Diego.
All right, so this next one's back from 2021. I guess we skipped 2020 and didn't do a homeless video then. Who knows? Pandemic, I guess our minds were on other things. But anyway, so this next video is from 2021 and it's about which states have the most homeless, period. How many they got. I got a lot of grief from people. They didn't think I should have done just the amount. I thought it was interesting. They wanted to do the per capita, and that will be our next video. So let's take a look at which states back in 21 had the most homeless.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to The World According to Briggs. Today, we're going to look at some facts about the homeless in the United States. For some reason, a lot of people think that only California, Oregon, Washington, and New York City have homeless residents. They have more than most, but they don't have them all. No state is immune when it comes to having a portion of their population living on the streets. A lot of things go into how a state gets a higher homeless population. It's not just the state or city's policies or politics. Those are a big part, don't get me wrong, but you also have to look at the climate, economy, population density, and the cost of living. All these things play a factor in putting people on the streets. There's a government agency that deals with the homeless issues in the United States. It is called the United States Interagency Council on Homeless, or USICH. The USICH is an independent federal agency within the U.S. executive branch that leads the research and the implementation of the federal plan to prevent and end homelessness, from their website. Anyway, every year they come up with the stats on how many Americans are living on the streets or in their car or whatever. We're going to rank each state by the number that they actually have that are considered homeless as of last year. We will also include the percentage of the nation's homeless that each state has. Wait until the end because these numbers get crazy. All right, let's take a look. Number 50, Wyoming. Wyoming gets cold and it is sparsely populated with no real big cities, so of course they're not going to have many homeless people. The study found that they only had 548 homeless residents in the entire state. The share of the nation's homeless population Wyoming has is 0.1%. 49, North Dakota. North Dakota, a lot like Wyoming, it gets cold and it doesn't have a lot of people. Fargo's one of their only big cities and it's just not that big. It's very cold. North Dakota had 557 homeless residents at the time of the study, giving them 0.1% of the homeless population of the United States. 48, Delaware. This is the first shocker. Delaware's not a big state, but they do have Wilmington and some other cities that are legit cities, and Wilmington's a nightmare a lot of the time. You'd think that they would have a lot more, but no, they don't. Delaware, at the time of the study, only had 921 homeless residents. I find that one hard to believe, giving them 0.16% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 47, South Dakota. The Mount Rushmore state doesn't have a whole lot of homeless. They don't have a whole lot of people in the first place, and then they just don't have a lot of them that are living on the streets or in the prairies or whatever homeless people do in South Dakota. At the time of the study, they only had 995 homeless residents, giving them 0.18% of the homeless population of the United States. 46, Rhode Island. Rhode Island, here they are. I figured they'd be kind of low. I mean, they've got Providence, which is a decent-sized city, but it's just a very small state, so they're not going to have a bunch, so I guess this one doesn't really surprise me. Rhode Island has 1,055 homeless residents, giving them 0.19% of the homeless population of the United States. 45, Vermont. Again, Vermont gets kind of cold. They don't have the biggest cities, and they don't have a ton of people, so this one makes sense. Vermont only had 1,089 homeless residents, giving them 0.19% of the homeless population. Number 44, Mississippi. The Magnolia State shocked me on this one. Mississippi is one of the poorest states we have in the Union. You would think they would have them everywhere, but if you figure in the fact that land and the cost of living is dirt cheap here, kind of makes sense that even someone on a really low income could afford to rent or buy some property here. Mississippi only reported having 1,184 homeless residents. The entire state. That one's kind of hard to believe, giving them 0.21% of the homeless population in the United States. Number 43, Montana. Now, you could start to see a pattern here. Other than like Mississippi and Delaware maybe, these aren't very populated states at the beginning of this list. Montana's a perfect example. They don't have a lot of people, and they don't have a lot of homeless. They only had 1,357 at the time of the study, giving them 0.24% of the homeless population. Number 42, West Virginia. This one, again, is a lot like Mississippi. They've got some serious unemployment issues, and you'd think a lot more people would be homeless. But then again, the cost of living and the cost of housing is extremely low in the mountain state, so you could pull it off at a very low income, I guess. West Virginia reported having 1,397 homeless residents during the study, giving them 0.25% of the homeless population in the United States. 41, New Hampshire. New Hampshire and Vermont are always next to each other in just about every stat, and they're not too far apart right here. New Hampshire only had 1,396 homeless residents, giving them 0.25% of the population. 40, Alaska. Alaska it's a unique state, obviously. It's out there by itself, up there with Canada and Russia and the Bering Sea and all that, and they don't really have big cities. They got Anchorage, Fairbanks, and a bunch of smaller cities, and it's a huge state. Not a lot of people live there, so of course they're not going to have a big homeless population. I tried to research to find out if they counted any of those people that are living off the grid in the woods there, and I really couldn't find any numbers on that. Alaska had 1,907 homeless residents, giving them 0.34% of the population. Number 39, Maine. I thought they'd be higher on the list. It's a pretty well-run state, so they have a lot of programs and stuff to keep people off the streets if they need it, and it's not terribly populated, but it can get really cold, so that probably keeps their number down pretty low. They had 2,106 homeless residents, giving them 0.25% of the population of homeless people in the United States. Number 38, Idaho. Last time I was in Idaho, I did see quite a few people live in their car. I shouldn't say quite a few. 3 or 4 cars with maybe 2 or 3 people living inside the car or the van at rest stops and things like that. And they were legit living in them. They weren't just passing through. But I still thought they would be earlier on the list. I didn't think they'd have this many, but they have 2,315 homeless residents, giving them 0.41% of the population. 37, Iowa. Iowa has the exact same numbers as Idaho. Again, not very populated. It can get cold. Don't have big cities. They don't have a bad economic situation in most of the state, so that helps keep their numbers down. Iowa had 2,315 homeless residents and 0.41% of the homeless population in the United States, just like Idaho. Number 36, Nebraska. I like Nebraska. It's a little slow and it's a little boring. They don't have really giant cities or anything like that. Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska are only considered big cities if you actually live in Nebraska. Every place else on the planet and the country consider them small cities. But Nebraska only has 2,365 homeless residents, giving them 0.42% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 35, Kansas. The Jayhawk state right next to Nebraska has very similar numbers. They had 2,381 homeless residents at the time of this study, giving them 0.42% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 34, Arkansas. This one's a lot like Mississippi. Their cost of living is really low, so is their housing prices, so this helps keep their homeless population kind of low. This is a state that doesn't have the best jobs, or in some cases, not many jobs. But they're still number 34 here. I would have guessed they would have been in the top 20 at least, but they aren't. Arkansas had 2,717 homeless residents, giving them 0.48% of the homeless population in the United States. 33, Utah. Well, again, this one's a little strange. I didn't think it would be here. I mean, they got good-sized cities like Provo and Salt Lake City, Ogden, St. George. But all in all, Utah's got a reputation for being a very well-run state. So it makes sense that they don't have a really high number, even though they do have decent weather and good-sized cities. Utah only had 2,798 homeless residents, giving them 0.49% of the homeless population. 32, Louisiana. Yeah, I would have thought it would be later on in this list. Louisiana got some serious poverty issues, and you would think that would land a lot more people on the street in this state, but like Mississippi and Arkansas, it's a pretty cheap place to live, so maybe that helps. Louisiana had 2,941 homeless residents, giving them 0.52% of the population. 31, Connecticut. Connecticut is a very strange state in more ways than one. And I've said this before, they've got some really run-down small towns and they got some poverty issues, but at the same time, they have a handful of the richest towns and neighborhoods this country has to offer. It's like the whole state is economically bipolar. They only had 3,033 homeless residents at the time of this study, giving them 0.54% of the homeless population in the United States. Number 30, New Mexico. I thought we'd have more here, but they're doing better than I thought they would. New Mexico only had 3,241 homeless residents, giving them 0.57% of the homeless population. Now, like I said, 3,241, it's not a high number. It sounds like it. 3,000 people living on the street in your state, that sucks. It really does. But when you see what some of the other ones later on this list have, you'll realize that 3,000 is not a big number. 29, Alabama. The Yellowhammer State is a lot like Connecticut. It has some really poor areas and some really rich areas. I guess all states do, but these two kind of have it at extreme levels. Alabama has some good-sized cities like Mobile, Montgomery, Birmingham, Huntsville. They have decent weather, no blizzards or anything like that. Their summers get a little hot. That's no big deal. And they have a fairly low cost of living. All these things spell out that they should have a much larger homeless population than they actually do. Alabama had 3,261 homeless residents, giving them 0.58% of the homeless population of the United States. 28, Oklahoma. Oklahoma has one of the highest percentage of residents that are on some form of public assistance, whether it's rental assistance, food stamps, whatever. And this helps keep their number kind of low. I mean, here they are at number 28, and they've got some serious poverty issues. You'd think they'd have more, but they don't. Oklahoma has 3,944 homeless residents at the time of this study, giving them 0.7% of the homeless population in the United States. 27, Kentucky. I thought this one would have more, I gotta tell you. I've been to Kentucky and they have some, I guess they don't have homeless. They just have a lot of poverty, people living in really rundown places, but they don't have a lot of homeless. Kentucky had 4,079, giving them 0.72% of the homeless population in the United States. 26, South Carolina. The Palmetto State doesn't have a lot of homeless people. Here we are at the midway point of this list almost. South Carolina only had 4,173 homeless residents, giving them 0.74% of the homeless population. 25, Wisconsin. The Badger State is at the midway point with their 4,538 homeless residents, giving them 0.8% of the homeless population. I think they'd probably have more if they weren't such a cool state. I mean, they're cold and everything's run kind of decent. I mean, I'm sure a lot of their homeless people are coming from Milwaukee, but they don't have a lot. 24, Indiana. When you got a place like Gary in your state, you'd think you'd have a lot more homeless residents than Indiana actually has. They're starting to get up there, but it's not terrible, again, compared to other ones on this list. Indiana only had 5,471 homeless residents, giving them 0.97% of the homeless population. 23, Virginia. I think this one's right where it should be, I guess. You got some good-sized cities like Norfolk and Richmond. They got a cost of living that's starting to climb at a pretty good pace, along with housing, so it makes sense. Virginia had 5,783 homeless residents, giving them 1.02% of the population of homeless residents in the United States. 22, Missouri. They call it misery, and I imagine if you're homeless here during the winter, it's even more fitting. Missouri had 6,179 homeless residents, giving them 1.09% of the homeless population of the United States. 21, Hawaii. The Aloha State has a reputation for having a homeless problem, and that's because they don't have many big cities, so they're all kind of concentrated in just a few places. So it seems way worse than it is. That's my opinion. Hawaii has 6,412 homeless residents, giving them 1.13% of the homeless population. 20, Maryland. I'm not sure what's going on with this one, but Maryland has the great city of Baltimore in it. And if you've ever been to Baltimore, you know there's more homeless people in that city alone than what this report said they have. That's my opinion. Again, filled with opinions. Maryland had 6,561 homeless residents during the study, giving them 1.16% of the homeless population of the United States. 19, Nevada. Nevada has some homeless residents, and it's sad. I've seen them. You could see them. They're on display there every day you go there. They're panhandling, whatever they could do to get by. And then you look at documentaries like the one about the people that live in the storm drains. There's a whole underground city of homeless people in Las Vegas. But we're talking about the entire state. And a majority of their homeless are going to be in Las Vegas. There's a lot of reasons you could end up on the street in Nevada, and not all of them have to do with gambling. Nevada had 7,169 homeless residents, giving them 1.27% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 18, Tennessee. Tennessee has some homeless. Mostly it's going to be in Nashville and in Memphis. The good news is most of them can play an instrument. I'm not even joking. Tennessee had 7,467 homeless residents, giving them 1.32% of the homeless population of the United States. 17, Minnesota. Yeah, I don't know if the Minnesota homeless residents got the memo, but it's not good to be homeless in extremely cold temperatures, and Minnesota is one of the coldest states we have. Minnesota had 7,977 homeless residents, giving them 1.41% of the homeless population. 16, Michigan. The Wolverine State cracks 8,000. As you can imagine, a majority of their homeless are going to be in either Flint or Detroit. And again, like Minnesota, this place can get brutally cold. And they've got homeless people living there. Almost 9,000, well, 8,575 homeless residents. Closing in on 9,000. That gives them 1.52% of the homeless population. Number 15, New Jersey. New Jersey is an extremely expensive state to live in, so it makes sense they got a lot of people hitting the streets here. But you'd think they'd have more. I mean, they're right next to New York City, and if you haven't figured it out already, New York is going to be in the top 5 of this list, and they're right next door. You'd think they'd have more, but they don't. New Jersey had 8,862 homeless residents, giving them 1.57% of the homeless population. Number 14, North Carolina. What kind of sick, twisted world does North Carolina have more homeless than New Jersey? That makes no sense. If you ever visit both of them, you'll be confused too. North Carolina had 9,314 homeless residents, giving them 1.65% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 13, Colorado. I've been to Colorado quite a few times, mostly the Denver area, and this one makes sense. I actually thought they would have more, but they're doing okay compared to what I've seen. Again, my opinion. The Centennial State had 9,619 homeless residents, giving them 1.7% of the homeless population of the United States. Again, not sure if this counts the people living off the land, dropped off the grid, or whatever. A lot of people do that here. Number 12, Arizona. You know, it's one thing to be homeless in the cold. That's pretty rough, but the blistering heat, it's got to be about as bad, in my opinion. Arizona gets hot, in case you don't know. Arizona had 10,007 homeless residents during the study, giving them 1.77% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 11, Illinois. I'm kind of shocked at this one. I mean, they got Chicago. At the rate people are flying out of Chicago, you'd think rent prices got to be dropping pretty quick. Illinois had 10,199 homeless residents, giving them 1.8% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 10, Ohio. Yeah, this is another place you don't want to be homeless because of the cold. Winters in Ohio can be brutal. You look at places like Dayton and Cleveland and Cincinnati, you got serious poverty issues there, so of course you're going to have some homeless. Ohio had 10,345 homeless residents, giving them 1.83% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 9, Georgia. Yeah, this one kind of caught me off guard. Every time I go to Georgia, it's nice, it's pleasant. You see a couple homeless here or there, you don't see that many. I was surprised that they had 10,443 homeless residents, giving them 1.85% of the homeless population. Number 8, Pennsylvania. I guess this all goes on in Scranton, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, because the places I've been to Pennsylvania, you don't see any of that. You don't see anyone living in their car or anything like that. But I stay mostly in the rural and small town areas when I go visit Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania recorded 13,199 homeless residents, giving them 2.33% of the homeless population in the United States. A little bit of a jump there. Number 7, Oregon. Now here we get to all the places that everyone thinks has a ton of homeless people, and they do. Most of Oregon's homeless are going to be up in Salem and in Portland. The rural areas have next to none of that, so it's just the cities. Oregon reported 15,876 homeless residents, giving them 2.81% of the homeless population. Oregon only has a little over 4 million residents in the entire state, so that's a pretty high number. Number 6, Massachusetts. Massachusetts has some places that got a fair share of homeless residents. A lot of it has to do with Boston and the Boston metro area and how expensive it is to live there. That's pushed a lot of people to the streets. I'm still surprised because they get some pretty brutal winters. You'd think they wouldn't have that many, but no, they got a good amount. 18,471 recorded homeless residents, giving them 3.26% of the homeless population in the United States. Number 5, Washington. So I've always heard, and I've seen the stats, that Washington and mostly Seattle has a ton of homeless residents. I live near Portland, and when I go downtown, I see tons of homeless. Washington apparently has it worse, Seattle being the main hub of this. When I was just up there 2-3 weeks ago, I was all over that city. I hardly saw any homeless residents. So, I mean, the numbers are right, and I know that. They're just not out in the open like they have here in Portland. I'm hoping that means they're in shelters, getting help. Something like that. I'd hate to think they're just out living in the woods because they have a ton of woods around Seattle. I hope that's not the situation. Washington had 21,577 recorded homeless residents, giving them 3.81% of the homeless population. Number 4, Texas. Every time I've gone to Texas, I've seen quite a few homeless residents. It never gets brought up that they have a bunch of homeless, but here they are at number 4. They're a big state, and I get that, and they have a lot of people, but they've got some homeless, and nobody ever talks about it in Texas. I don't know why. Texas has 25,848 homeless residents, giving them 4.57% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 3, Florida. Yeah, this is another one. Every time I go there, I see a good amount of homeless people. The heat and the good weather brings them in. I mean, good weather when they're not having a hurricane. But Florida had 28,328 homeless residents, giving them 5.01% of the homeless population of the United States. Number 2, New York State. Obviously, large majority of the homeless in New York State are going to be in New York City. So it's almost like we could just talk about that. I'm sure there's a couple thousand scattered throughout the rest of the state, but a majority of them are going to be in the 5 boroughs. New York is number 2 for a reason. It has had a homeless problem for a very long time, and it's just getting worse. New York had 92,091 homeless residents reported, giving them 16.27% of the homeless population of the United States. And they're not even number 1. I guess we all know who number 1 is. And number 1, California. Yeah, if you didn't know this was going to be number 1, I don't know what you read or if you watch the news or anything like that. California has a homeless problem that is epidemic level. San Francisco is just crazy bad. You go down to Los Angeles and you see some of the areas like Skid Row. It looks like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. It's that bad. Have you ever heard the old thing where you're sleeping in the gutter? I've driven through there and people are literally sleeping in the gutter. Like half in the street, half on the sidewalk, right there where they meet. That's where they're sleeping. Like if a car tried to pull over, they would run someone over. And that's not just 1 or 2 people. That's all over the place. Skid Row part of LA is just sad and depressing, and I don't even think the officials know what to do at this point. It's gotten that bad. It is crazy bad. Now, a lot of this has to do with policy. A lot of it has to do with the cost of living. A lot of it has to do with housing and weather. All those things combined, Los Angeles, San Diego too, not as bad as Los Angeles, and San Francisco have all of those things, and it's just like the perfect cocktail for an epidemic of homeless residents. And it's too bad. These people need a lot of help, and it's really sad. California had 151,278 homeless residents reported. Yeah, 150,000 homeless people living in California. They have 26.73% of the homeless population of the United States. 50 states, they have a quarter of the population. That's just nuts. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to The World According to Briggs and a cleanup video. A couple days back, I made a video about the homeless population of each state in the United States. The focus of the video was to dispel the myth or belief that only places like New York, Washington, Oregon, and California have homeless residents. They have more than most states, but every state has a homeless population. The comments section and my email were ablaze with people asking why I didn't include the per capita of each state. I probably should have. I just had another thought process going into that video and kind of stuck with it. But this channel isn't just for me. I like making them, but really it's for you guys and whoever happens to wander on here and check out one of my videos. And if that's what you want, I'd be dropping the ball if I didn't do it, or at least give it some consideration. Now I say at least give it some consideration because I get plenty of requests to do videos of a racist nature, and I'm not gonna do them, and you'll never see them. And if I didn't say at least consider them, I'd get all kinds of emails asking me to do those videos, and if I didn't do them, I'd get even more emails. So that's how we're doing this. The number of homeless people is based on a point-in-time estimate, one-night estimates of sheltered and unsheltered homeless population in the United States. They are carried out nationwide during the last 10 days of January each year. In this case, January 2020. They'll be coming out with 2021 numbers later this year, and we'll make another video so we could see the difference. And I think there should be a pretty good difference because it'll be the height of the pandemic versus the pandemic kind of waning hours, I guess you could say. I won't be talking much in this video. We sort of went over everything in the last video, so we'll just kind of breeze through it. All right, let's see how many homeless people for every 10,000 residents in each state. Number 51, Mississippi. Now this, the other day I was a little shocked about because they have horrible amounts of poverty in this state, but they don't have that many homeless residents. I think there's two reasons for this. Number one, housing and cost of living are pretty cheap, so not many people are being put on the street because they couldn't afford rent or things like that. That happens a lot with states that have a higher cost of living, and on top of it, Mississippi doesn't have a lot of programs to help the homeless. For every 10,000 residents, 3.7 are homeless in Mississippi. Number 50, Alabama. Everything I just said about the Magnolia State, Mississippi, is the same in Alabama. They don't have a lot of programs, probably a few more than Mississippi has, and it's a little more expensive, so they get more homeless. For every 10,000 residents, Alabama has 6.8 homeless residents. Number 49, Louisiana. Staying in the South, we have Louisiana. Same thing as Alabama and Mississippi. Don't have a lot of programs. I mean, these are three very poor states, and if your state is in bad shape financially, I mean, one of the first things you're going to cut is programs for the homeless. Again, they have programs, just not nearly as many as a lot of other states do. For every 10,000 residents, Louisiana has 6.8 homeless residents. Number 48, Virginia. Another southern state. Financially, Virginia is doing a lot better than Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, but they got a little more homeless. Probably attracting them because they do have a lot more programs and a better economy. For every 10,000 residents, Virginia has 7 homeless residents. Number 47, North Dakota. I've mentioned this before. I actually know a guy that used to be homeless in North Dakota. Fargo, actually. He used to work construction before the collapse around 2008, and he lost everything. Him and his wife ended up sleeping in his truck for months. They both ended up working in fast food, hoping that construction will start picking up again, and then winter hit, and in his words, there has to be something seriously wrong with you to be homeless and stay in North Dakota during the winter. For every 10,000 residents, North Dakota has 7.1 homeless residents. Number 46, West Virginia. West Virginia isn't doing that bad. With all the problems they've had in the last decade or so, you'd think they'd have a lot more homeless, but they don't. Again, like Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, it's extremely cheap, so that probably saves a lot of people from hitting the streets. For every 10,000 residents, West Virginia has 7.5 homeless. Number 45, Arkansas. Arkansas, again, total poverty. The state is wrecked in a lot of areas. I've always said that northwest section is doing great, but the rest of the state is basically, they should fence it off and forget about it. For every 10,000 residents in Arkansas, 7.8 are homeless. Number 44, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a great state, has a lot of great places to live, and they've got a lot of good programs for the homeless, but I just think, like North Dakota, their cold chases a lot of potential homeless people out of the state. For every 10,000 residents, Wisconsin has 7.8 homeless. Number 43, Connecticut. Connecticut is definitely the worst of all the New England states. If you're from the West Coast and you've never watched my channel before, you probably didn't know that. You just imagine all New England states are great and wonderful. Connecticut has some really run-down, horrible places, and they've got some homeless. Not a whole bunch, but they have some. Again, I think the cold has something to do with it. For every 10,000 residents, Connecticut has 8.1 homeless. Number 42, Illinois. I'm kind of shocked at this one. If you take a look at some of the inner city parts of Chicago and some of the other places in Illinois that are cities, you'd think there'd be more, but no, not that bad. For every 10,000 residents, they only have 8.2 homeless residents. Number 41, South Carolina. Back to the South we go, and South Carolina, they're doing better than I thought they would. Other than Charleston, Columbia, Myrtle Beach, and a few other places, South Carolina has a lot of places that are wrecked with poverty. Luckily for them, it's mostly rural places and small towns, and a lot of homeless residents don't hang out in small towns. They move to bigger cities. For every 10,000 residents, South Carolina has 8.3 homeless residents. Number 40, Indiana. The Hoosier State doesn't have a lot of homeless people. I'm a little shocked. I mean, with cities like Gary, Indiana, and Toledo here, you'd think they'd have plenty of homeless. And for those of you typing out that comment, I know Toledo's in Ohio. I'm just kidding. But Indiana doesn't have a lot of homeless people. For every 10,000 Hoosiers, you only have 8.4 homeless Hoosiers. Number 39, Iowa. Nobody wants to be in Iowa, much less if you're homeless. They don't have a lot of homeless. For every 10,000 residents, Iowa has 8.4 homeless residents. Number 38, Kansas. Just like Iowa, same thing. It's like two states that are almost exactly the same to most people not from the states. I'm sure if you're from the state, you could find different reasons, but they got all the same stats in all the right places. And homeless, they share the same number. For every 10,000 Kansas residents, they have 8.4 homeless residents. Number 37, Michigan. Again, a Michigan winter is not a thing you want to experience if you're homeless, especially since they started tearing down all the vacant houses around Detroit. There was a time where they'd go there and they'd live through the winter, but no, you can't do that anymore. Most of them are gone. Just tons of vacant lots outside of Detroit. For every 10,000 Michigan residents, 8.6 are homeless. Number 36, North Carolina. North Carolina's been gaining popularity in recent years. A lot of the people moving there are young people that are into music or whatever. They want to, kind of just live there for some reason, near Asheville or whatever. One thing leads to another, and a lot of them end up on the street. For every 10,000 North Carolina residents, or Tar Heels, whichever you want to call them, they have 8.8 homeless residents. Number 35, Kentucky. I've been doing these lists for about 5 years now, and I can tell you, Kentucky is the biggest mover in the suckage list. I mean, they started off, in the 15 to 10 area when I first started. Now they're, depending on the stat, they're just getting worse and worse and worse. And they're usually in the top 5 now. It's weird. I don't know what they're doing there. But their homeless situation isn't terrible. I mean, they're not even at the halfway point. For every 10,000 Kentucky residents, 9 of them are homeless. Number 34, Ohio. Ohio doesn't have a lot of homeless. I mean, this is a state that's actually I'm starting to see them get a little bit better in a lot of their different stats. So this doesn't shock me that they don't have a terrible amount of homeless residents per capita. No word on how many of them are ex-Cleveland Browns quarterbacks or coaching staff, because that could be a lot if they all were. For every 10,000 Ohio residents, 9.1 are homeless. 33, Texas. Texas breaks all the rules. They got big cities, they're a very popular state, but they don't have a lot of homeless. I've said it many times before, there's a lot of good things going on, and Texas is kind of running the state correctly. At least they did in the past, and it's paying off now. For every 10,000 Texas residents, 9.4 are homeless. Number 32, Georgia. The Peach State has a lot of the things that would tell you they're going to have a lot of homeless. Decent weather, summers get a little hot and muggy, they got some big cities, and they've got some inflation and housing costs are going up, but they still don't have a terrible amount of homeless. For every 10,000 Georgia residents, 9.6 are homeless. Number 31, Utah. Utah is a lot like Texas in a lot of ways. They've done some good moves, they've done some smart things, and they're not a terrible state. Actually, one of the most desirable states to move to. I'm actually surprised more people don't move to Utah. For every 10,000 residents, 9.8 are homeless. Number 30, Oklahoma. If you poured over all the stats like I do, Oklahoma always pops up along with Kentucky as a state filled with suckage. So I thought they would be higher up on the list, but they're not. For every 10,000 Oklahoma residents, 9.9 are homeless. Number 29, Rhode Island. Probably the easiest state to count the homeless because it's so small. I bet it's more accurate than most. For every 10,000 Rhode Island residents, 10.44 are homeless. 28, Pennsylvania. One of my favorite states, Pennsylvania, isn't doing terrible when it comes to homeless. For every 10,000 residents, they have 10.4 homeless. Number 27, Maryland. I mentioned this on the last video. With Baltimore there, you'd think they'd be in way worse shape, but they're not doing terrible. I do know they have a lot of programs to help people get back on their feet in Baltimore, and maybe it is paying off. I don't have the numbers on that. But for every 10,000 residents, Maryland only has 10.5 homeless. Number 26, Wyoming. Now this one's, the stats might be a little weird because they have so few people that, the per capita, it makes sense, but they really don't have a lot of homeless people. For every 10,000 residents, Wyoming has 10.6 homeless residents. Number 25, Tennessee. The volunteer state gets us to the midway point, I guess almost midway point because we're counting Washington, D.C. on this one, with stats that aren't terrible. For every 10,000 residents, 10.6 are homeless. Number 24, Missouri. The Show Me state shows you they're just like Wyoming in numbers. For every 10,000 residents, they have 10.6 homeless residents. Number 23, New Jersey. They should have more, but everyone's fleeing the state, so they don't have that many. For every 10,000 New Jersey residents, 10.9 are homeless. Number 22, South Dakota. I've seen some stats about the homeless in South Dakota. A large majority of them are of Native American descent. Now, this subject needs a whole video, and I'm only spending like 10 seconds on each one, but maybe in the future I will kind of tackle that one. It's pretty sad. For every 10,000 South Dakota residents, 12 are homeless. Number 21, Delaware. Sort of mentioned this in the last video. You'd think that Delaware would be in worse shape because of Wilmington. It's not a big state. Wilmington is their largest, pretty much takes up half the state almost, it seems like. But they don't have a ton of homeless. For every 10,000 Delaware residents, only 12 are homeless. Number 20, New Hampshire. This one kind of shocks me. New Hampshire's a fairly well-run state. They don't have a lot of people, so their homeless situation should be a little easier to tackle. They don't have any giant cities like Delaware with Wilmington or Baltimore. For every 10,000 New Hampshire residents, 12.3 are homeless. Number 19, Nebraska. Interesting story about a Nebraskan current resident that was homeless once. That's how he got to Nebraska. He was actually driving across the country and his car broke down. Well, it was overheating. And he pulled off, found like a little creek that was there with a tree and just kind of parked his car and didn't know what he was going to do next. After he was there overnight, in the morning, he wakes up and there's this older man who's apparently owned the land. He was a farmer, and asked him what was going on. He told him, and he said, well, next day or so when my guy's not busy, I'll send him over to see if he can fix your car. So he had a mechanic that worked on the farm, and he sent him over there. The guy fixed his car. The old man told him, you can stay here if you want, I guess he had corn or something he was growing there. He said, if you need any corn, just go ahead and grab it out of the field. And he goes, and when you're on your way, just make sure you clean up this area. So he thought that was really cool. He stayed there for a couple more days, talked to the old man again. He worked on that farm for like 3 years. Finally made his way out to California and was a stand-up comedian. That's how I met him. For every 10,000 Nebraska residents, 12.4 are homeless. Number 18, Florida. Florida, I thought would have had more, but here they are at number 18. I thought for sure they'd be in the top 5 or maybe at least the top 10, but no. For every 10,000 Florida residents, only 12.8 are homeless. Number 17, Idaho. I thought Idaho would do a lot better than 17, kind of the opposite of Florida. I thought they'd be way lower on the list, but no, here they are at 17. For every 10,000 residents in Idaho, 13 of them are homeless. Number 10, Minnesota. This is another one I'm kind of shocked that they're this high on the list. If I was homeless, I wouldn't stick around a place like Minnesota. A lot like Fargo and North Dakota and all that. It gets a little cold and you should start heading south. For every 10,000 Minnesota residents, 14.1 are homeless. Number 15, Montana. Again, shocked that they're here on the list. Thought for sure they'd be really, really early in the list. Not that many, but they don't have a lot of people, so it's probably easier to pull off a per capita like this. For every 10,000 Montana residents, 14.5 are homeless. Number 14, Arizona. Got an email from one of the subscribers that is a paramedic in Phoenix. And he said there's probably a lot more in Arizona than they're reporting. And he mentions how every single day of the summer, he called it scraping one off the sidewalk that passes out from heat exhaustion or heat exposure, something like that. For every 10,000 Arizona residents, 15.1 are homeless. Number 13, Maine. Again, a little shocked at this one. Thought they'd be earlier. Maine's a pretty mellow state. They don't have a lot of crime. They don't have a lot of problems. It's an older population. But for every 10,000 residents of Maine, 15.6 are homeless. Number 12, New Mexico. If you look at their other stats of poverty and people on public assistance and stuff like that, you'd think that New Mexico would be in the top 5 at least. I mean, all the stats they have point that direction. But here they are. At number 12, for every 10,000 New Mexico residents, 15.9 are homeless. Number 11, Colorado. This one doesn't surprise me at all. Colorado, I wouldn't say is known for this, but they kind of are. Sort of like Oregon is, and Seattle. For every 10,000 Colorado residents, 17.1 are homeless. Number 10, Vermont. Cracking the top 10, we have the Green Mountain State. What's strange about this one is no matter what stat I'm doing, Vermont and New Hampshire always have very, very similar stats. This one, they're a little bit far apart, a little bit more than normal, I should say. For every 10,000 Vermont residents, 17.8 are homeless. What are they called Vermonters? I don't know. If you know, let me know in the comment section below. Number 9, Nevada. The Silver State is just like the Green Mountain State when it comes to this stat. For every 10,000 residents, 17.8 are homeless in Nevada. I'm kind of shocked at this one, especially if you've ever visited Las Vegas. I mean, it's a big state, and Las Vegas isn't the entire state, but kind of is. You'd think that they have a lot more, but they don't. Number 8. Massachusetts. Now we're picking up some steam. Massachusetts has some pretty good sized cities that, have some problems. Boston, beautiful historic city, but it has some areas that are just not good. And it kind of shows with the amount of homeless people they have. For every 10,000 Massachusetts residents, 26.1 are homeless. Number 7. Alaska. The frontier state doesn't have a lot of people, but they do have a good amount that are homeless, and again, a lot of that has to do with the Native American population. It's not all, that's just a good part of it. It's too bad. Like I said, eventually we might do a video on that whole thing, but I wouldn't be able to do it justice in a video like this. For every 10,000 Alaska residents, 26.6 are homeless. Number 6, Washington State. Now, I'd say like 75% of the homeless for Washington State are gonna be in the Seattle-Tacoma area. They've got a lot. I was just up there recently to Seattle. I didn't see a lot on the street, and I mentioned that in the last video, and everyone said you gotta look underneath the overpasses. They don't go into the street as much as they do in Portland. They're all underneath the freeways and in the woods around the city. For every 10,000 Washington residents, 30.1 are homeless. Number 5, Oregon. Yeah, we're kind of known for our homeless here in Oregon. Really, Portland, but that's where majority are, I should say. But every city we have has a good amount of homeless. A lot of it has to do with our policies and things like that and all the different programs we have. If you know you're going to get some help someplace and you have the ability and you're homeless, you're probably going to move to that state. And I think that's one of Portland and Oregon's biggest problems. Not that it's a problem, we're helping people, but it draws in a lot of homeless, which creates other problems. For every 10,000 Oregon residents, 34.7 are homeless. Number 4, California. All right, close your mouth. I know you're all shocked. They should be number 1. That's what everyone thinks. But when it comes to the per capita, they have so many people, they're not that bad. Well, they're bad. They're just not as bad as you think they should be. For every 10,000 California residents, 40.9 are homeless. That's a big number, but really, you'd think they'd be number 1 on this list. They're not. Number 3, Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii's got some homeless issues. There's a lot that goes into this one, and it's too bad. There's always those urban legends or rumors that we give them tickets to Hawaii from the mainland, one-way tickets, and then our homeless get, like we're putting homeless people, scooping them up in San Francisco, putting them on planes to Hawaii. It's like, come on, it's not happening. But they think it is there. They do have a lot of homeless people. For every 10,000 Hawaiian residents, 45.6 are homeless. Number 2, New York. New York, again, you probably would have thought it would be number 1, but here it is at number 2. And obviously, most of their homeless are going to be in New York City, like I said in the last video, and probably some in Buffalo, maybe Rochester a little bit too. But a majority are going to be in New York City. And that's why people are flooding out there, not because of the homeless, because of the situation. It's too expensive, and that's sending people out of the city and out of the state and onto the streets in a lot of cases. Now, I always give those reasons because we all know that over half the people on the streets are suffering from addiction problems, mental issues, things like that. When I talk about how they're moving or they can move, I'm not talking about those people. They're a different set of issues that you can't fix in a lot of ways. I mean, you can try and get them help, but they're just always going to be that way, I think. It's too bad. It's really sad. For every 10,000 New York residents, 46.9 are homeless. Before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link down below. We would love it if you go over there, watch a video, maybe subscribe. If this is your first time to this one, please subscribe. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, the District of Columbia. Yes, our nation's capital is filled to the rim with homeless residents. And that one, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's always bad when you have homeless, and it's just too bad. And there should be a solution, there just isn't. Will always be that way. It's just how many can you get off the street? But this is our nation's capital. This is a place we should put more effort into. You know, I mean, we get people coming from all over the world. This is one of the first places they go. It doesn't look good for the country. And I would think this would be one of the first places they would clean up. But here they are at number 1. Now, tighten your seatbelt. I'm going to give you the number here, and it's scary. For every 10,000 residents, 90.4 are homeless. They almost doubled New York, and they did double California.
So this next one is from 2022. It's kind of a recap of what we'd looked at before, but we were seeing if they've gotten better and where they stand a year later. Let's take a look.
What is going on, everyone? Let's take a look at the homeless situation in the United States. I was in downtown Portland the other day, and I noticed that there might have been a slight reduction in homeless camps around downtown. Don't get me wrong, it is still really bad, and Portland is one of the top 5 cities when it comes to the homeless epidemic. Nick Johnson just did some really good videos on the homeless situation over the last couple months. He focused on individual cities, and I started wondering what's going on statewide across the nation. I found a government study that compared the estimated averages from 2019 to 2020. I thought we'd compare the 2 years and see where they are and who got better and who got worse. I'll do every state including Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. We will look at the homeless rate per 100,000 residents and what was the percentage change from 2019. This is all 50 states, so I won't bog it down with too much talking. Towards the end, there are some important details that should be pointed out about a few of the states. And for our vision impaired audience, even though I said I won't be doing much talking, I will be saying every state and the stats all the way through the video. Let's take a look. 52, Mississippi. We're starting off this list going from the best to the worst. And 52 for Mississippi is phenomenal. There's 50 states, but we're counting Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico in this one. So Mississippi is the absolute best when it comes to homelessness, and a lot of that has to do with their low cost of living. They do have a high poverty rate. There's a lot of people that are almost on the street, but it's so cheap, they have pretty good numbers. There are 3.7 homeless people per every 100,000 residents in Mississippi. Their change from 2019, it was lowered by 7%. Good job, Mississippi. Your brain check question is, what is the second leading cause of homelessness behind mental illness and addiction? 51, Louisiana. Louisiana, again, low cost of living. They don't have that many, but it's still a big jump from Mississippi. There are 6.8 homeless per every 100,000 residents in Louisiana. They've grown their homeless population by 8%, so it went up. 50, Alabama. Alabama, again, low cost of living, so they're not doing terrible. I should mention that anything above like 8.5 for every 100,000 residents is when it starts getting not good. I mean, nobody living on the streets or homeless is a good thing, but it really looks like you have a problem when you're above 8.5 for every 100,000 residents. So that being said, Alabama's not doing that bad because they have 6.8 per every 100,000 residents. From 2019 to 2020, their homeless population grew by 3%. 49, Virginia. Virginia's not that cheap, but they're still holding it together with a low rate of homelessness. 7 for every 100,000 residents. They did grow by 3% from 2019 to 2020. 48, North Dakota. Who'd want to be homeless in North Dakota? That's got to be rough during the winter. North Dakota's rate is 7.1 per every 100,000 residents, and they went down by 3% from 2019 to 2020. Good job. 47, West Virginia. West Virginia, like Mississippi, the rate is really low, and a lot of that has to do with the low cost of living and the low cost of housing here. I mean, it is really low in West Virginia. We've talked about that many times before. Their rate is 7.5 per every 100,000 residents, and they shrank their homeless population by 4% from 2019 to 2020. 46, Puerto Rico. You know, we never talk about Puerto Rico that much on this channel. We probably should. I mean, they're not technically a state, they're a territory, but they're the closest of all the territories to being a state, I would think. In Puerto Rico, it is 7.7 per every 100,000 residents that are considered homeless, and that shrank by 3%. Good job, Puerto Rico. 45, Arkansas. Arkansas, again, like so many other ones, their low cost of living is helping out, and they have jobs there, and people are really doing good good things to get people off street, and it shows. They have 7.8 per every 100,000 residents, and from 2019 to 2020, they shrank their homeless population by 13%. That's the best on this list, I believe. 44, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, again, who'd want to be homeless in a place that gets that cold? I mean, not like anyone chooses to be homeless, really, but you get what I'm saying. I would head south if that was my situation. There are 7.8 per every 100,000 residents in Wisconsin. Their homeless population shrank by 1%. Connecticut. Connecticut's homeless population is 8.1 per every 100,000 residents, and it shrank by 4% from 2019 to 2020. 42, Illinois. Illinois, you'd think would be worse with Chicago and all the drama that you hear about this city. But no, they're doing not terrible. They're 8.2 for every 100,000 residents in Illinois, and their homeless population grew by 2% from 2019 to 2020. 41, South Carolina. Now this is where we start getting towards the almost, you probably have a problem. South Carolina is a great state, especially when you look at the low country, Charleston, places like that. But there's a lot of places in this state that aren't doing really well. They have 8.3 homeless for every 100,000 residents in South Carolina, and their population grew by 3% from 2019 to 2020. 40, Kansas. Kansas, you know, this is a state that pretty much has it together. I mean, they got Kansas City, but a majority of the state is a great place to live, and I'm kind of surprised they're not doing better with the homeless situation. They're not terrible compared to some of the other places, but I just thought they'd do better. They have 8.4 per every 100,000 residents. They grew their population from 2019 to 2020 by 3%. They grew their, I make it sound like they're trying to. No, their homeless population grew by 3%. That sounds better. 39, Iowa. Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska are always right around the same area in just about every stat, sort of like Vermont and New Hampshire are. But they're the same as Kansas with 8.4 per every 100,000 residents. Sadly, their homeless population grew by 14% from 2019 to 2020. 38, Indiana. This is about the midway point when it comes to the stat, not the midway of the list. But 8.4 per every 100,000 residents is about where you'd consider the state is doing good versus a state that's doing bad. Everything else after this, they're not doing great. Indiana has 8.4 homeless for every 100,000 residents. The homeless population grew in the Hoosier state by 3% from 2019 to 2020. 37, Michigan. Michigan's got Detroit. Flint isn't terrible when it comes to homeless. I was looking at some charts, oddly enough. They just have a lot of poverty. Detroit, on the other hand, it's pretty bad. 8.6 for every 100,000 residents. The homeless population in Michigan grew by 1% from 2019 to 2020. North Carolina. The Tar Heel State comes in with 8.8 homeless per every 100,000 residents, and they're the same as they were in 2019 to 2020. So even. 35, Kentucky. This is another state we never talk about on this channel for some reason. They never come up. They're always like middle of the road to almost bad enough to make the list on just about everything. But here they are at number 35. They have 9 per every 100,000 residents, and their homeless population had a 2% reduction from 2019 to 2020. 34, Ohio. Ohio, again, very cold state, but they got a lot of problems in Cleveland and some of the other cities. If it wasn't so cold, I bet they'd have a higher number, but there are 9.1 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 3% from 2019 to 2020. Now, I will tell you right here, I started off this video and I had all kinds of footage I had from downtown and other places of homeless residents, and I just didn't think it was cool to put those up, so I'm just putting up the states. I mean, they're in the worst situation of their life. In most cases, there's no need to put that up there. 33, Texas. Yep, the Lone Star State is not doing great, but they're doing much better considering they're one of the major states like California or New York. But they have 9.4 per every 100,000 residents. Their homeless population grew by 5% from 2019 to 2020. 32, Georgia. The Peach State, they're not doing terrible, but they're not doing great. 9.6 homeless per every 100,000 residents, and that population shrank by 2% from 2019 to 2020. 31, Utah. This one sort of surprised me, but my last video was on Utah and I talked about how expensive it was getting. In the last 4 or 5 years, it's gotten really expensive, and this has put a lot of their residents on the street or living in cars, things like that. And it shows 9.8 per every 100,000 residents are considered homeless in Utah. That population grew by 12% from 2019 to 2020. There is a lot of reasons people end up on the street, but I'm sure that's a major player in their population right now. Number 30, Oklahoma. Oklahoma has 9.9 homeless residents for every 100,000 residents, and that's the same as they had in 2019 to 2020. 29, Rhode Island. Rhode Island, I'm kind of shocked, but they're so small, it's easy to get a high number by having a small homeless population. They have 10.4 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 5% from 2019 to 2020. 28, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, they've got some places with a lot of homeless. Pittsburgh's not nearly as bad as Philadelphia, but still bad. They have 10.4 homeless for every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 1% from 2019 to 2020. 27, Maryland. Maryland with Baltimore, it's got some problems, and their homeless population is 10.5 per every 100,000 residents. The good news is that population shrank by 3% last year. 26, Wyoming. Again, this is a really small population, so it's easy to get a high number if you have a small homeless population. If we went by the total number of homeless, they would be third from the bottom, meaning the best, with only 612 homeless residents. But Wyoming's homeless rate is 10.6 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 12% from 2019 to 2020. 25, Missouri. The show me state is not doing great when it comes to their homeless population. They have 10.6 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 6% from 2019 to 2020. 24, Tennessee. Tennessee, like Missouri, has a homeless rate of 10.6 per every 100,000 residents. The good news is that population shrank by 3% from 2019 to 2020. New Jersey, the Garden State, is growing homeless. They have 10.9 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 9% from 2019 to 2020. 22, South Dakota. South Dakota, again, just like North Dakota and some of the other colder states, if you end up homeless here, my suggestion is head south if you can. It gets way too cold here during the winter. They have 12 for every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 6% last year. 21, Delaware. All right, this is where it starts really getting bad. Delaware has 12 homeless per every 100,000 residents, and last year, that population grew by 25%. Number 20, New Hampshire. New Hampshire, I was a little surprised at this one. I thought they'd be doing a lot better, but they're not. They have 12.3 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 20% last year. 19, Nebraska. Nebraska, this is another one I'm a little shocked about, but they're not doing great. They have 12.4 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 2% in 2020. 18, Florida. This one is surprising too, with big cities like Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville, Tampa area. You would think it would be a lot higher, but no, they're not doing terrible. 18. I mean, for a big state and a big cities, they're not doing terrible. They have 12.8 per every 100,000 residents, and that population shrank by 3% last year. 17, Idaho. Again, surprising. I thought they'd be doing better, but I think a lot of these people that are homeless in Idaho are the people that are living in motorhomes and stuff and cruise around the state. They're still homeless. They have 13 per every 100,000 residents, and that's the same thing they had from 2019. No change. 16, Minnesota. Again, cold state. Why do they have such a high number? You'd think people would just go someplace else. I mean, it's not always something they can do. It's not like they can walk to the southern part of the country or they have the money to really move themselves, but there's a lot of different situations. But they have 14.1 per every 100,000 residents, and that's the same as they had in 2019. 15, Montana. Another shocker. I didn't think they'd be on this list this late. I thought they'd be much earlier. Like Wyoming, some of the other states, they don't have a giant population, so it's kind of easy for them to get a high number. But they have 14.5 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 14% last year. Number 14, Arizona. Arizona, I think it's growing because prices are going up here for housing and just everything. They have 15.1 per every 100,000 residents, and their homeless population grew by 10% last year. Number 13, Maine. Again, cold state. Don't know how this happened. Maine is usually the top of the class when it comes to just about every single stat. But here they are, almost cracking the top 10 with 15.3 homeless for every 100,000 residents. And there was no change from 2019 to 2020. Number 12, New Mexico. Gotta tell you, I thought New Mexico would easily be in the top 5, but no, they're doing better than I really thought. They have 15.9 for every 100,000 residents. That population did grow by 3% last year. 11, Colorado. Colorado has a large homeless veteran population that I think needs a little more attention than it's getting. Overall, the country's doing a lot better in the last decade with the homeless veteran situation. I mean, in 2010, they figured there's about 75,000 homeless veterans, and in 2020, there's about 37,000. So they're getting better. They just got a long way to go, and a lot of these guys live in Colorado. Colorado has 17.1 homeless for every 100,000 residents, and they increased that population by 2% last year. Number 10, Vermont. Breaking away from New Hampshire on a stat. That is very rare for these two states. But Vermont has 17.8 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 2%. Yeah, every single time. They're always right next to each other, along with like Iowa and Kansas are always right next to each other too. Not just on the map, in most of their stats. Number 9, Nevada. Nevada has 22.4 per every 100,000 residents. That population shrank by 3% from 2019 to 2020. Now, you always hear that Nevada has one of the worst homeless situations. Compared to some of the other ones on this list, they're not doing terrible. I mean, 22.4 is a horrible number, but compared to like the last 4 on this list, they're not doing terrible. Number 8, Massachusetts. Yeah, this is an expensive state. A lot of people are living on the street. Boston's got a pretty bad problem with their homeless situation. They got 26.1 for every 100,000 residents. The good news is that population did shrink by 4% from 2019 to 2020. Number 7, Alaska. Again, this is a state that's huge, but they don't have a giant population, so their number could be a little misleading, I guess. But they have 26.6 per every 100,000 residents, and that homeless population grew by 3% last year. Number 6, Washington. The only surprise here is it's not higher. You hear about the homeless situation in Seattle, so you expect them to be pretty high on the list, and here they are at number 6. Washington has 30.1 per every 100,000 residents. It's not just Seattle. All of their major metro areas like Tacoma, Spokane, they all have pretty good size homeless populations. They also have a lot of those prepper types, end of the world, living in tents or shacks in the woods all throughout Washington. So I wonder if that was figured in. I tried to, see if they counted them, but I couldn't find anything. But Washington has 30.1 per every 100,000 residents, and that population grew by 6% from 2019 to 2020. Number 5, Oregon. This is normally, they're not number 1, and you'd think they would be by all the press and all the news you hear about it. They're just not that bad. They've actually gotten a lot better. The numbers prove it. These aren't my numbers. I'm getting these numbers from a government study. But Oregon right now has 34.7 for every 100,000 residents, and the population shrank by 8% from 2019 to 2020. Number 4, California. This is where it gets really bad. They'd probably be a lot higher if they didn't have just this massive population. I mean, they should be higher. They should be number 1, and I'll explain that right now. Right now, they have 40.9 per every 100,000 residents. That population grew by 7% from 2019 to 2020. California is the absolute worst, in my opinion. But since we're going by the rate, there's other states that are in worse shape by the rate. But the total homeless population for California, they figure there's 161,000 people living on the streets in California. We're talking Los Angeles, San Diego, which has done a lot better in recent years, but you got Oakland, San Francisco, all those places, and Sacramento, matter of fact. I was there, and that was crazy like 3 years ago. But the population of homeless people in California is huge, and it needs some serious work. I mean, they're putting a ton of work into helping these people. It's just too big. They need more help. They need to do other things. The last few here, I will tell you what their total population is, so you could see how California is the absolute worst. Number 3, Hawaii. Hawaii, again, small population, they have a high rate. It's bad, but I don't think they deserve to be number 3, but here's their rate. They have 45.6 per every 100,000 residents in Hawaii. The homeless population in Hawaii grew by 1% from 2019 to 2020. Their total homeless population is 6,451. Number 2, New York. New York has a huge homeless population. Sadly, a majority of it is down in New York City area. There's homeless throughout the state, don't get me wrong, but obviously about 75% are going to be in the New York City area. New York has a total homeless population of about 91,000 residents, and their rate is 46.9 for every 100,000 residents. And the answer to the question, what is the second leading cause of homelessness behind mental illness and addiction? The answer is affordable housing. All right, on to number one. And number one, Washington, D.C. That's right, the nation's capital has the highest rate, but in reality, they don't have that many homeless. That's what I was saying. I got to explain some things at the end because they're a little deceiving. We're going by the rate and we got to stick with the rate. Washington, D.C.'s rate is 90 per every 100,000 residents, and that population shrank by 2% from 2019 to 2020. Their total homeless population is only 6,300. So, like I said, obviously California is the worst, but their rate doesn't show it because they have such a large population. All right, that's today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, be nice to each other. What is going on, everyone? It is time to do another requested video. Back in April, we did a video about the best places to be homeless, because sometimes, like Minnesota, sucks to be homeless because you might freeze to death. So there's nice places to be homeless if that's the cards you were dealt. Nobody wants to be homeless. In the last couple weeks, I have noticed that it's getting more and more attention. The federal government is talking about getting involved in California and New York's homeless problem. There's also talk of working on the extreme poverty in the southern states as well, which is all really good news. The reality of homelessness is that it can happen to anyone. A lot of people are just 1 or 2 paychecks away from living in their car or actually on the streets. I know a guy who got laid off from his good paying job and lived in his car and showered at his lower paying job for about 4 months until he got back to his old job and made more money. It can happen. Those things happen. It's not just money problems. I went to school with a girl who had a breakdown while going to UCLA, and she just walked away from her apartment. She lived on the streets of Santa Monica for almost a year before her family found her. And she's from an upper middle class family. I think her dad was a lawyer. It's not just your stereotypical old man that drinks and has bad luck betting on the ponies. It can happen to anyone. Luckily for both these people, life turned around with some help. In the description box below, I have links to some great organizations. If you wanted to help out, they're there for you. So, what cities have the most homeless people in the United States? We're gonna find out right now in my top 10 American cities with the most homeless. Number 10, Las Vegas, Nevada. If you didn't know Las Vegas would be on this list, you've probably never been to Las Vegas. And before you feel the need to point out the difference between Las Vegas and Paradise, Nevada, stop typing. We are talking about metro areas in this video. Vegas is the city of entertainment, and apparently a ton of people end up homeless here. There are about 2.2 million residents in the Las Vegas metro area and about 6,000 homeless residents. The unemployment here is one of the main factors in the homeless problem. It's at 7% currently, while those who do work are barely scraping by with an income that's way lower than the national average at $29,000 a year. Gambling, giant margaritas, and other addictions play a big part of putting people on the street in Las Vegas. I wouldn't want to be homeless here. It's just sweltering heat most of the year, and I mean, that's never comfortable, even when you have a place to go home and take a shower. And then you got to factor in permanent sunburn because you probably can't afford sunblock. No thank you. The good news is they have a lot of programs for the homeless here. They kind of have to. Number 9, Boston, Massachusetts. Boston is the 5th most populated city on the East Coast with 667,000 residents. The entire metro area has about 4.6 million. More than 6,200 residents here have been struck by homelessness. While the unemployment rate is kind of low at 2.7, the jobs they have there are not quality jobs, for the area at least. The cost of living here is 81% higher than the average, with the housing cost spiking about 215% higher than the national average. In other words, people can't afford an apartment in Boston working at a gas station. If you make under $30,000 a year while living in Boston, chances are you have 5 roommates and you're very close to living on the streets. I read about one guy who became homeless because he was broke and he figured it was harder for the bail bonds company that was trying to track him down. It was harder for them to find him if he had, didn't have an address. That might be kind of smart though. Think about it. It's hard to track someone down when they have a situation where their home address is kind of fluid. Number 8, Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix may be one of the most dangerous places to be homeless in terms of natural conditions. The city has about 1.6 million residents, the metro area has about 5 million, and about 6,400 residents are homeless. About 25% of them are unsheltered and living on the streets. Unsheltered means they are basically urban campers. They are living under the stars most nights, if not all nights. Not in a car or some homeless shelter the local government has set up. They're outside. That means they're exposed to the extreme Arizona heat, which can be very dangerous. I've seen people get heat stroke. It ain't cool. Like day 2 of Ranger School in the Army, some dude collapsed on a run and he started screaming like Sam Kinison. If you don't know who Sam Kinison is, anyway, this dude was like, "Oh my God, what is happening to me? What is happening to me?" He was having heat stroke, and I was thinking the same thing. Oh my God, what is happening to this dude? Anyway, he got a free helicopter ride and we kept running. Extreme heat with no shelter can be really bad for human beings. It's just how it is. Thankfully, the Phoenix Homeless Project is a program that targets the homeless to get them back on their feet and get them off the streets and get them what they need. It's a good thing. Number 7, Washington, D.C. The country's capital is not someplace you'd expect there to be many homeless. Unfortunately, it is, however. And no, they're not all politicians that lost their last election. That would be kind of good, though. They could see how the other half lives and maybe make some changes. The homeless population has risen to nearly 7,000 over the last couple of years. The good news is it went down a little the last 2 years, which is good. Let's hope that trend continues and we can all learn from it. So why did it get to 7,000 in the nation's capital? In part, it was the unemployment rate of Washington, D.C. It had spiked to 5.6. This is during good times. This isn't during the recession. This forced about 16% of the residents to live in extreme poverty, and home foreclosures raised to 2.13%. That's kind of a lot. Across the country, unemployment is down, which is great. The fact of the matter is, most of those jobs are really low-paying jobs, which sometimes leads to working homeless people. The homeless people that have jobs. It's not good. And that's what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. Number 6, San Jose. Just down the 101 from San Francisco, you have San Jose, or as an Army friend of mine from Minnesota called it, San Hoji. I don't know why. San Jose is the 3rd largest city in California with just under 1 million residents. The bad news is in San Jose City, just the city by itself, there's over 6,000 residents that are homeless, either in shelters or on the streets. The San Jose metro area has about 10,000 homeless residents. The city offers a few emergency shelters, but they got a ton more resources, such as Life Moves, that helps homeless individuals and families in many ways, like finding shelters, getting warm home-cooked meals, things like that. I'll leave a link for them below. Number 5, San Diego, California. Being homeless is no joke, but at least in San Diego, you can do it and be warm. Among San Diego's 1.4 million residents, about 8,500 of them are homeless. The entire metro area is working with about 11,000. The unemployment rate here is less than California's average at 3.6%, and that's as of July of 2019. So it isn't much of a factor as other places. They have a lot of homeless for a place that has jobs. That kind of tells us that if the unemployment did spike, it could get much, much worse in San Diego. Now, understand unemployment is only one of the many reasons someone becomes homeless. Matter of fact, 2 of the major ones are psychological problem and drug addiction, which in some cases it's the same thing. But those are the 2 things that get named the most. San Diego wrestles with other issues being so close to the border that contribute to their homeless situation. Then of course you have the weather. Like I said in my last video, if you gotta be homeless, you should do it where there's good weather, if you can. I think 2 or 3 of those YouTubers that live in their van are doing their videos in San Diego. They live in San Diego. It's these van life videos. And what's strange is most of them are young ladies. It's really weird that that's what it's come to, but that's a situation we have to live with. It's usually, a lot of times with people like that, it's student loan debt. Number 4, San Francisco, California. Yes, San Francisco is not the worst like I'm sure many of you were expecting. San Francisco is bad, but it's not that third world country bad some in the political arena want you to believe. I was there like 4 months ago. I found no human waste or needles on the streets. Let it go. San Francisco is known for being way too expensive. The city has a population of 885,000 residents, and about 9,000 of them are homeless. In this case, we are just talking about the city, not the metro area. The overall cost of living here is 204% higher than the national average, with housing costs about 611% higher than the national average. That's disgusting. The average income here is about $96,000 a year. However, anything under $100,000 in San Francisco is considered low income. How bad does that suck? You have an income that 45% of the country dreams about, and you could barely make it work in San Francisco. You don't need to be homeless in San Francisco. You just need to leave San Francisco. If you're not making the $150,000 a year, there's no need to try and make it work anymore. Pack it up, go someplace else. else. Go live in the desert. San Francisco isn't worth it. Number 3, Seattle, Washington. Seattle is home to some pretty big companies like Amazon and Starbucks. However, if you're not fortunate enough to work for one of those companies, it may be hard to find a good job that pays well in this area. Seattle is a very expensive place, with the cost of living being about 104% higher than the national average, and the housing index alone being about 307% higher than the national average. It's no surprise that Seattle has the third most homeless residents at 12,000. That's a lot of homeless people. The sad fact is, it'll probably climb even higher next year. Number 2, Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles County, or Los Angeles metro area, has about 10 million residents, with about 50,000 of those being homeless. You heard me right, 50,000 people in Los Angeles are homeless. Besides the places like Skid Row, which should have been fixed 20 or 30 years ago, you have these streets and industrial areas where people living in cars, vans, and motorhomes make these little villages at night. It's like Winnebagoville or something. Los Angeles is the largest city on the West Coast, right next to San Diego. Being the largest city in a prime area, things can get crowded and expensive. In a relatively cheaper area and somewhat safer, for Los Angeles safer, like Mar Vista, a 500 square foot studio apartment is anywhere from $1,900 to $2,500 a month. 500 square feet studio apartment, that much. And it could get higher, but that's kind of the average. If you must live in Los Angeles, try a nearby suburb to save some money. I saw an interview where some of these mobile homeless people were living, and the guy went around and talked to some of them. One guy said he needs to be close to his workman's comp lawyer and a good payday loan place just to survive. That's just a bad situation when that's what you're waiting for. And number 1, New York City, New York. New York City is the most populated city in the country with 8.35 million residents. That is just the city, not the county or metro area or anything like that. 8.35 million residents. Among these residents, 78,000 of them are homeless. You heard me right, 78,000. It's a tough place in New York City, especially if you're going through rough times. The cost of living here is extremely high, with housing costs being about 254% higher than the rest of the country. So many people romanticize New York and Los Angeles for that matter, and they often forget about the tragic situations like the number of people living on the streets and hungry. Pretty sad. New York City has a ton of programs and shelters to help with this situation, but it isn't enough. The people that work for these programs and shelters are overworked and underappreciated. Hopefully someday they can get a handle on this and, get it down somewhat from like 78,000. That's still incredible.
All right, so this next one was done in 2023, and it was about how Portland had made some steps to fix their homeless situation. Some laws have been passed and some court cases had been settled, so they thought they'd give it a shot to try and clean up at least the downtown area. This is that video. Let's take a look.
Portland, Oregon is a city that's been facing a significant homeless crisis for a lot of years now. Many people are wondering why this is happening and when will something be done to address this issue. Here's the good news. They've started. Now, there's many reasons for this, and I'm going to go over some of them for you. The first reason for the homeless problem in Portland is the lack of affordable housing. Housing prices in Portland and its suburbs have been rising rapidly, and many people can't afford to pay for a place to live. This has forced a good amount of individuals and families to live on the street or in their cars, because in a lot of cases, that's their only option. This video was done in March of 2023. I would say the homeless crisis in Portland, Oregon peaked somewhere in 2021. During the pandemic, the homeless population exploded in Portland. We've always had it, it was just never that bad. Obviously, the lack of affordable housing is just a small part of the big issue that's going on here. Another factor contributing to the homeless crisis in Portland is lack of mental health and addiction services. Many of the homeless struggle with mental health issues or addiction issues, and they don't have access to the support they need to get back on their feet. And some of them just don't want to get back on their feet yet. Portland has shelters and they put a lot of money into it. They just don't have enough shelters to go around. And a lot of them, especially the ones dealing with drug problems, don't want to go to the shelters because they can't do drugs in the shelters. Or they're suffering from some kind of mental issue which they don't want to have to follow rules. Or they can't. Shelters tend to have a couple rules. It's not just a free-for-all roof over your head. This parking lot to the left is at the entrance of what is called Chinatown. For at least 2 years, there was nothing but tents there. I'd say about 50 tents set up in that parking lot. I'm not sure when they finally fenced it off and chased everyone out, but I would say it was sometime after summer of 2022. I'm sure most of you heard about all the problems going on here in Portland, and I'm sure most of the things you've heard were greatly exaggerated. It's not good. I'm not saying it's nothing to worry about. It's just not as bad as they make it sound. Got to remember, even news outlets and Twitter page and even YouTube channels like myself, we're all out to get the clicks. And a little exaggeration here or there gets the clicks. Another thing people don't talk about, and I'm going to get some grief over this one, policies that Portland had in place for years almost laid out the welcome mat for people to come to Portland to be homeless. If you're living homeless in Boise and the cops keep making you move your car or tear down your tent every day, and they actually arrest you for drug use, you're going to find your way to a place that's not doing that to you. Now, I understand homeless people are in a bad situation, and I feel bad for them in a lot of ways, but one of the biggest issues, and an issue they're actually dealing with now, is on display in the neighborhood I've been driving around. This is the Old Town neighborhood of Portland. Some people call it Chinatown because Chinatown is in Old Town, just a small section of it. If you look at it on a map, Old Town is east of Broadway and north of Burnside. In Old Town, you'll find the famous Portland White Stag sign and Portland Union Station. You'll also find one of my favorite places in Portland. It's called Ground Control. It's an old school arcade. I love the place. But the Old Town section of Portland is where a lot of the, I call them sidewalk villages started. These are little tent cities. At their worst, you would find maybe 10, 15 tents next to each other on a single block. Now it sucks and it's horrible that these people have to live on the sidewalk like that, and a lot of sympathy goes out to those people. But what about the business owners that are trying to run a business that may have been there for a couple generations, and now you got these tents in front of your front door and no one can come into your business, no one wants to come into your business? You got to deal with all the problems that goes with having a little sidewalk village right there? Well, people started complaining about it enough, and they've been complaining for years, that finally the city has started to do something. And I think the city started to do something when they started finally realize that their tax dollars were going to be going down, because business after business in Old Town and other parts of Portland were just closing up shop. It wasn't worth it. The city, like most cities, got hit pretty hard by all the businesses closing down because of the pandemic. Now you got to deal with this also. I only employ 5 people, but if I had an office in Old Town Portland over the last year, I wouldn't want my employees coming down there for that. I would have moved. Well, the city's finally realized this and they've started to clean it up. And I can tell you, from my drive around and walking around Old Town on this day, there's maybe 25% of the tents that I saw 2 years ago down there. Nick Johnson did a pretty good series on the homeless up and down the West Coast, and he went to Portland, and that was back in 2020, maybe 2021, and he was there during the peak of it. I walked around some of the streets with him, and it was pretty ugly back then. It is so much better. Now, it's worse than most other major cities in the United States right now, but compared to what it was 2 years ago, they've done incredible work downtown. Now, you still have some tents and you still have the normal garbage going on down there, but it's getting better. They're playing whack-a-mole with them right now. The police will come by and chase them all off a block. They'll move like 4 blocks away, set up camp 2 days later. In 2021, there was an estimated 5,000 people living on the streets of Portland, Oregon. In 2022, that number dropped down to about 3,000. Now, these come from a point-in-time survey, as they call it. This is where they just do some estimating to figure out how many people are on the streets, because it's hard to get everyone in a line and start counting them. So in 2021, they estimate there was around 5,000. Other groups have it higher than that. But in 2022, it did go down around 3,000. So why did this happen? Well, most of it's going to be the easing of restrictions from the pandemic. People went back to work and they quit living in their cars. Then the new governor got elected, and on her first day, she declared a state of emergency for the homeless situation in most of the state. After the last election cycle we had, it was very clear that the people of Oregon, the Oregonians, are done with this and something needs to be done. They've had different policies and different programs before, but now finally the mayor of Portland is really doing something. I think he's getting the money from the federal government and the state government to actually make things happen. And I think that's why in the Old Town area where I was on this day, which used to be the hardest hit, looks like it's making progress. Did the new money and new policies and programs just make people unhomeless? No, maybe a few, but I'm sure about 90% of them are just someplace else still being homeless. I didn't go to every nook and cranny of Portland looking for them to find out why they're not in Old Town, but on this day, like I said, the hardest hit area, there were very few. I've been hearing that from a lot of people that are working downtown and in the Old Town area that I know. They say it's not as bad. Now, none of them actually work down there, but they have to drive down there for different supplies and stuff like that. They've all seen a noticeable difference. If you're from a city that doesn't have a serious homeless problem or hasn't had one in recent years, you probably just looked at everything I showed you and thought, that's horrible there. Well, compared to what it used to be, Portland's doing pretty good. They got a long way to go before they return to their former glory, which it wasn't the greatest when I moved up here in 2010, but it was a lot better than it's been in the last few years. Would I recommend someone moving to Portland, Oregon right now? Probably not. I might suggest some of the suburbs, got some really nice suburbs, but living downtown is not a good plan right now. It's getting there, but I think we're still a few years off. If they do fix everything, I don't know what the people of Portland are going to do. Walk down the street without having to avoid someone asleep on the sidewalk? Watch 6 people go into a 2-person tent to have a private meeting? Yes, I saw that before. I guess no one ever told them that tents aren't really soundproof. There's a guy right now in downtown Portland that I've seen walk around with like a scuba mask, snorkel, wearing 3 or 5 jackets, and a Dora the Explorer backpack. All right, everyone, that's today's video. Go out, scare yourself a little, and be nice to each other.
All right, so this last one is from just a couple months back when Portland, actually a couple weeks back, when Portland started enforcing their street camping ban. The Supreme Court of the United States finally came out and said that yes, cities can stop people from camping on the sidewalk. So it's a slow progress, it's a slow cleanup, but maybe they'll get there. Let's take a look at this video. So Portland, Oregon has instituted a sidewalk camping ban.
I vote aye, and the ordinance is passed as amended.
Wednesday morning, inside Portland's temporary council chambers, commissioners voted unanimously to make it illegal to camp on public property when shelter is available.
How this works is if there's basically room at the inn, you're not allowed to sleep on the sidewalk. They have these safe rest areas and these tiny home villages where if you're homeless, you can go stay there. And if those are all filled up, go ahead, pitch your tent on the sidewalk. We're going to see how the cleanup's going. Now, keep in mind, this is what it looked like in 2021. So let's go down there and check it out. About 3 years ago, we were in the middle of the pandemic here in Portland, Oregon, just like every place else. During that time, our homeless population blew up. I mean, it did in a lot of other cities, but for some reason, Portland got hit especially hard. One of the reasons for this is we have a pretty good network of ways to get help if you are on the streets. So that sort of served as a magnet for people that had been on the streets. They came to Portland, Oregon. Last year or so, Portland has kind of had enough. I mean, we all had enough before. It just got to the point where something had to be done. And that's what's going on right now. I am right now in one of the worst hit areas of the homeless situation from about 2 or 3 years ago. It's the Old Town area, Chinatown, whatever you want to call it. This place had tents on every single sidewalk, on every single block throughout this little area. Now, this was going on other places in Portland, Oregon, but this was the hardest hit. Right now, we're going to take a look and see what's changed and how much the city has improved and the things they've done to fix this situation. If you've been watching the news, you probably think right now that Portland is just still completely overrun with homeless. It's not. No more camping on the sidewalks. As you can tell from the people behind me, not everyone's got the memo. So you're probably wondering, why is that? Why don't we just have everyone off the street? Well, there's a lot to it. There's certain laws that the city has to follow that they're trying to fight in different courts where we have to leave people alone. The end result will hopefully be that we get these people the help they need and get them off the streets and help return this city to what it once was. So this is still the old town area. As you can see, there's no tents on this sidewalk. And I'm telling you, back in 2020, there would easily be, from right here, you would easily be able to see at least 5 or 6 tents. No lie. Bikes and all their trash and everything else like that. So this is an improvement. Now that area back there is near the Amtrak station, and for some reason homeless people tend to stick around the Amtrak station and the bus stations. Don't know what that's all about. Maybe they're waiting for a free ticket to get out of town. Who knows? If they were, I'm sure the city would go down and give them tickets. There's one tent over there. 2 years ago I was down here by the Chinese garden, and that whole sidewalk right there where the red car is was filled all the way to about that entrance of that gate. Just nothing but tents. And this side of the street too. Now, in front of me is where a lot of them will hang out because there's a good place to get help over here. Saw an article not too long ago, probably 2 years ago, where the lady that I guess runs this place, or one of the ladies, she was saying that every morning there was tents out here and it was ruining the business here. So the city had to do something about it, and they did, finally. Imagine that, another glass bus stop got broken down. Right up here, underneath this overpass, there was nothing but tents like 2 years ago, and then they put all these rocks here. Kind of hard to set up a tent when you got all these rocks here. There's one. This is, I did a short where I took, I got it off of Google Street View of this park over here and how many tents there were. I'll show that to you right here.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Ronnie. There's nothing good about this at all.
Size camp over there. So for the longest time, people that were living on the streets usually stayed underneath bridges, overpasses, things like that. Since the Occupy Wall Street people came in and they camped right in the parks and right on the sidewalk, it kind of gave people an idea where, hey, we could do that too. And not many people really thought buying a tent from REI was a good substitute for an apartment. But when the Occupy Wall Street people did it, all of a sudden a lot of the people that were living on the street said, hey, we could do it too. That's what spurred all this sidewalk camping. Before, if someone was camping on the sidewalk, they were just laying down on the cement. That was it. They were laying down right there on the cement. End of story. Now all of a sudden they got tents, and it makes it more, I wouldn't say accepted, but it makes it an easier choice than sleeping in a cardboard box or on the sidewalk just waiting for the rain to happen. This is another area that was really, really bad back in 2021, 2022. I see one guy over there. That's it. These are bubblers. They have them all over Portland. It's in case you get thirsty. Back in the day, for some reason, someone thought that if they put these around, men wouldn't be drinking as much whiskey. That was the theory originally. Now they're just kind of a relic and a piece of nostalgia. Yeah, you got to do this sometimes too. Get more pressure at some of them. I did it one time to get some water out of one, and a guy did it on the other one at the same time, and we both sprayed ourselves in the face by accident. We're idiots. So right behind me is the world famous Voodoo Donuts. A couple of years ago when I was here, brought some family here, it was like 2 homeless people right here. That whole little street down there was just filled with them. Now look. Nothing. Not bad. Not bad, Portland. It's looking a lot better. So across the street, there's 2 tents on the outside of that fence. During the peak of the homeless situation here in Portland, Oregon, that whole little corner was, I would say, no less than 40 tents. Just people living on top of each other in little tents like that. Now across there, it's right next to like this Life Help Center where they get a lot of their aid and stuff like that. So you'll always see homeless right here. So if you just look at this corner, it looks like nothing's changed. The good news is crime is down now in Portland, Oregon. I was just talking to a cop who didn't want to be on camera, and he said it's a lot less than it was, let's say, 2 years ago. Things have gotten a lot better, especially the downtown and the Old Town area. So there's only really one crime going on right now on this corner, and it's this over here. What the fuck, Chevron? Regular 549? Biodiesel 489? That's getting close to $6. What the f? I honestly remember when I wasn't going to pay $1.99 for a gallon of gas because I was offended. That was like 10 years ago. How are you doing? Miss America right there. It's Captain America's wife right there. Look at them pants. In there for like 5 minutes. So for a while there, this was one of those safe rest areas. For some reason, they closed it down, and now, back on the streets. Got a few down here. It used to be a great comedy club. So is Portland in perfect shape right now? Not by any stretch of the imagination. Has it gotten better from 2 years ago? I wouldn't say 100%, but absolutely, it has gotten a lot better since then. We'll see how the new camping ban works out in the coming months, but I think a month in, it's showing some promise. The rules on the camping ban are you're not allowed to sleep on the sidewalk or set up a tent on the sidewalk if they have available beds or available spots for you, let's say to put up your tent at one of these safe sleep zones or one of the shelters they have. If they have open spaces, you're not allowed. Now, if those spaces get filled up, they'll let people sleep on the sidewalk. Obviously, where else are you going to put them? That's all there is to it. But we'll see how it works out.